Welcome to another episode of Soulstenance. Today, Joe and I get into the topic of public speaking, which is a very personal topic for both of us. And this one was very interesting. It's very close to my heart. It's a big part of my path and my journey and what I see in my future, what my purpose. It's very clear. And so we get into the journey of speaking publicly, even doing this podcast, the journey, what happens even on epigenetic levels, how it gives us so much opportunity for growth, and essentially shines a spotlight on our fears, anything we might be hiding from ourselves, and how wildly useful, and a bird just came up to my window, useful and powerful that is for growth, for being present, for liberation, for freedom. There's so many benefits. And so without further ado, I'll let you dive right in. Enjoy. Very interesting. So remember when I think I told you, or sent you the book, I think you may have read it already, Tools of Titans by Tim Ferriss? Yeah, so it's a beast. I'm still not all the way through it even.
Yeah, I haven't read all of it. I've read sections.
Yeah, because there's like the three sides. It's like health, money, and what was the other one? It was three he did. I forget. Finance, physical health.
Those are the two I'm remembering right now.
Yeah, that was the third one.
There is a third pillar.
And so just a cool synchronicity was, it came up several times on my trip recently to Montana. It came up, it's just come up a lot, and there was a cool synchronicity where on the plane coming home yesterday, I started Tools of Titans, I don't know, months ago, and it's a beast of a book. And I click play, and it was the guy before Sean White, who he interviews. What's this guy's name? And one of the first things that I hear is how important it is to learn public speaking. And that's just, it's been on my radar. And that guy even talks about the reticular activating system, which is like a part of synchronicities, depending on what model of the world you have. And I wanted to share this dude's name, give him some credit here. Where am I?
Yeah, that's cool. I'm interested.
Scott Adams.
Scott Adams.
Apparently he talks about the power of affirmations, which is interesting. He said, this is what I think is cool, is I think affirmations, just saying stuff to me, doesn't really do much at all. And we've talked about this, I think, a lot of people have, where it's just like, my mind's like bullshit, and it doesn't get to the subconscious mind. But there's something this guy talked about, and there's like a nuance of it, is he's like, you write down, and he doesn't say this piece, but I'll add this piece to it. He just says, write down 15 times every single day what you want to manifest. Right, But I would say, what we do in NLP is you got to make sure it's in past or present tense, not in future tense, because then your subconscious is like, well, I don't have it. And so present tense, write down versions of what you want. And he said, I think it was to become like a world famous cartoonist or some wild goal. He'd never even started that endeavor. And he became one of the top comedic cartoonists in the last like 30 years. And he said that, so he's like, he's like, I can't really give any evidence to this. He's like, it's a theory I've heard, and you and I, right? I've heard a lot of mixed opinions. I think affirmations are minimally effective when you speak them. But he said the act of writing it every day, and this is where he syncs it up to the reticular activating system and then to manifesting, is it's your subconscious mind. Our reticular activating system like pulls out the 126 bits of the 2 million, right? And tells us what to pay attention to, whether it's good or bad. It's trying to like protect us, or it's like what we are aware of or have been thinking of If we start talking about butterflies, you're going to see them all over the place. You buy a new car, you see it all over the place for the next few weeks or months. That's the reticular activating system. He said, so at the very least, I'm hacking that. And so every day, I'm not just saying it, I'm writing it down and I'm seeing it. He's like, I think he said, I say it, I see it, I write it, I hear it. And he said, and I know that only has a minimal effect, but it hacks the reticular activating system. He said, and all of a sudden I would just start thinking about it more. I would start seeing these connections to being a cartoonist. I would have these ideas don't think I would have had. So that was pretty amazing. But towards the end of the summaries, he says that, and I have to give some credit to Naval Ravikant. And this was interesting too, because this is how my career in sales engineering got started. He says, it's really, really hard to be the best at one thing. So become pretty good, or the top 25% at multiple things. And based on your interest and where you are, whether it's 2, 3, 4, or 5, those sync up in your uniqueness and make you a presence and an authority in that niche. And that was me. I was an engineer, super nerdy, but I could sell. And so I was a sales engineer, and I got paid well at a young age for doing that. It was a unique niche. There's not many people that can speak nerd and sell. And so for him, though, he said of all those combinations, public speaking is one of the things I tell everyone that I either mentor, that I know, that I work with, get good at public speaking. So I'm on the plane, and it just, of all the signs and the momentum there, that popped up, and I was like, So I'm getting a lot more about it, a lot more interested about taking action. I could go on more, but that was quite a bit. So I want to see what you're thinking, where you're at. Yeah.
I'm curious initially, because I concur with the majority of what you said, and I'm interested in knowing more about like what this person's thoughts were behind the usefulness, or why public speaking was kind of a pillar regardless of what other things this person was interested in. But for you, what do you feel like in your experience with public speaking, on your journey to practicing it, becoming better at it, even just the time, the internal dialogue around the act of public speaking, because for most of us, even just thinking about that starts a journey inside. Like what about that has been useful for you? How has that changed how you showed up in other ways? Like, is specifically your interest in public speaking, or is it more what I'm hearing is the public speaking itself? There's so much to be learned and gained from the act of doing that and getting good at that, that it's kind of its own, the pursuit of that is its own reward, and like what, kind of what gives back.
Very good series of questions. It
was a series. I apologize. That was multiple.
No, I love that. I usually ask a series of questions.
You do. This is true.
So when I get it back, I'm like, yes. But I was laughing. I have to ask something first before I even answer that. You said I think you said the thought or the intention of public speaking starts an inner journey. I wanted to see what you meant by that, because I have a mind read that's quite humorous, but I don't know if it's right.
I think for me, it's you've heard the statistics before. I think Seinfeld even has a joke about most people would rather be in the casket than giving the eulogy. Just this fear around public speaking. It's next to death as on the want to do list for most people. Like, it's just it's not there at all. And it's been a very different journey for me. I mean, 10 years ago when I thought about public speaking, I think inside a lot of different emotions fired and activated than do now. No. But I think it's pretty consistent with people that they have some emotion towards this idea around public speaking. And it's really hard to even just think about it without it lighting up, firing off, however you want to say.
That's what I thought you were saying. Yeah.
All kinds of stories inside of a person.
Yeah, I think so. Then I can honor some of your questions. So my understanding is, like, kind of filtering that a lot, is it's one of the top phobias, and I think
Hmm.
it's not necessarily like a phobia of public speaking, like people say that, but I think isn't it? It's the humiliation or something that can come from doing that. Have you heard that?
I mean, that makes more sense. It's more like
Right? I
the
heard that
potential
recently.
failure connected to it, not the actual
Yes,
public speaking
doing it.
itself.
Yeah.
And I think
S-
that's a helpful understanding, but I think that's probably true of everything we fear in some way. It's like maybe not necessarily that thing, it's like the repercussions from
the social consequence of if I screw
what can
up
happen
or
if I do that. Yeah.
the vulnerability. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I love. Okay, so I love this. There's a series of answers to that. I was just talking about this with my mom.
Hmm.
Several people, honestly, in the last 2 weeks, and there's been some cool synchronicities. I want to share this synchronicity before I answer that because it's so freaking cool. So when I first saw the Tony Robbins documentary, we've talked a lot about this, right? I just was bawling. My soul came to life. I didn't understand it. It's a big breadcrumb in my journey. And though I'm going to manifest and already am very different things that Tony Robbins does, he does a pose more than anyone I've ever seen. And it's a pose that I do every time I get out of the cold plunge. And I never really explained this to anybody that I remember. I never talked about it. And I was with someone, and we were talking, this was like a week ago, we were talking about music and stuff, and I shared a playlist with her, and so I got to explaining this pose thing, and this all ties back to public speaking and my journey and my path and like what I see as like my purpose, like what I'm meant to do. And I never explained this, and I just went off on this pose I do, and when I just feel alive and strong, and my purpose to like open hearts, inspire souls, see people deeply, and like light the fire at the soul level that gets them out of the like mundaneness of just going through daily life and brings them to life and better sets them on I think a more adjusted path to what they are really like their potential, and not just getting through the day. And when I get out of the cold plunge, and we've done this, I feel so alive when I'm alone. I get out and typically just put my arms up. I don't know if you can see. Yeah, put my arms up like that, and I stand and put my head up to the sky, and I just like hold that pose, and I just feel like just like I could take the world by the horns. I just feel so alive, and I kind of look up at source, and I get the sun, and I look up at the trees and the clouds, and I just feel great. Tony Robbins does that pose. It's literally on the homepage of his website. And I never explained this to anybody, but it's been this thing I see in my mind. Like, I think I may have did that at the end of our trainers training for public speaking. I think I did that for a moment at the end when I got my certification.
Yeah.
I did, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I go off and I explain this to somebody, and I'm just like, that's my pose. Like, I see myself on stages. I see myself doing big events, group events, connecting with more people. And like that's a part of my brand even. Like it's this pose of like surrender and also power at the same time. And like maybe even when I'm doing group events, like get people to do that, right? Like there's various, power poses. And I think that's just a huge, like it's spread, I take up space. So I explain all this in detail like 2 Sundays ago. And then last week, someone here at the office, I know very well, out of nowhere, we're eating pho, lovely, Vietnamese, love it. And out of nowhere, she just turns her computer around and says, hey, did I ever show you my old business card like 15, 20 years ago? And it's a person in a field doing this. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me, right? And this is not just reticular activating system, because I didn't say anything, right? And it was shown to me, and that was interesting. And so I tell her the whole story that I just told you. That came up again when I was in Montana, and I even got like a really cool picture of me doing that on my friend's property. And so to me, to answer your question, like I have to share that story because it's just so freaking cool. Like all the synchronicities aligning. But But for me, it is. So when I go back to trainers training, that thing we did, like I had to go through moments of severe discomfort,
Mm.
but I'm obsessed with it for several reasons. One, I just feel like on a soul level, it's a part of my journey. Even because of my diagnosis, I was asked to be on stage as like a intro speaker, and I had totally forgotten about this when I was up in San Jose. This was, I don't know, 10 years ago.
Mm.
And I did a short speech on stage. I was super nervous. I blacked out. I don't even know what I said. I was so nervous.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I feel it is a way to connect with more people. My gift that I believe I was born with, in a sense, like I think we all have one or more. One of mine, I think, is correlated to deeply seeing people and like x-ray visioning their soul, and with as much safety as I can. Like, I see you.
Mm.
And it does a very, very powerful thing that I think it's hard to articulate. And I want to do that with a lot of people. So like when I think of my purpose and even my business model of writing books, being on stage, being a keynote speaker, doing workshops, events where it's more engaging, I just feel I'm meant to do that. And so the discomfort, the terror, the fear, the, whatever stress I need to go through to really embody that, it's like, cool, I'll do it. Because I know that's my path. And I believe I'm also gifted in ways that I've got really cool feedback from people. One woman at our thing said, you could beat the guy who owns the company that's teaching us this. And someone we both know said that before I even went there. And I was like, didn't really believe it. And then I heard it again from a Greek woman that we know at that event, and just breadcrumbs, And so it's like that pose, it's like coaching, but it's with more people, and it's, I can reach more people more effectively, influence the world and my community more, and it's more lucrative. And so to me, it's a win-win-win, and it's like I have to do it. So, yeah. What about you, though? I mean, we obviously went to that, right? You went there for a reason. You've done Toastmasters, I believe, already. I haven't done that, which is a part of where I'm thinking of getting involved again somehow locally. But I want to know, too, like, why did you go to that? Where do you see yourself with that in the future? How does this all tie to your vision for yourself?
Great questions. Yeah, thanks for sharing a bit more of your story on that as well before I go on. But for me, my interest in public speaking, I don't know, it probably dates back to teenage years. Like I enjoyed being, I don't know. I mean, I think there's I was about to say the center of attention, and there's an aspect of that that's true. But I think more to do with like that phase of life and like where I was. Like I don't think inherently I've been someone who likes to necessarily be in the middle, but there was a real clarity at that age that I really wanted to be able to clearly articulate and speak what I thought, to multiple people and to a group. I had many really powerful and meaningful, individual relationships, but I discovered in my late teens that I really struggled when I tried to talk to 5 or 6 people or more at the same time. Whether I was passionate about it or interested or just trying to get a laugh. I really like entertaining people too. That's also a piece. I like making people laugh. I always have. And part of that's my own joy. Like it makes me laugh, and it's just like I realize I am seeking my own my own joy in that too, which is really neat, as I step back from it. But I realized that I didn't really know what it was, but I had a really hard time speaking to multiple people, and I started to notice at that age the different people in my group who didn't have that, the ones that were comfortable speaking in front of people, the ones that were comfortable getting up and, whether it was making an announcement or teaching or training or trying to get people involved in something they were doing. I noticed that those people were often leaders in the rest of their life as well. Like they weren't just comfortable being up in front of speaking. Like more often than not, those were people who were taking action in their own life and had more direction than the people who weren't as clear in front. And I thought that was a really interesting thing to notice. I think early on that there was kind of um, a sectioning off of how these people showed up in their greater communities based on their own inner clarity or comfort being in front of other people. And I think I at that age definitely was probably assigning a lot more to it that wasn't necessarily there, or but I did realize that it was something I was uncomfortable with and really wanted to change and wanted to step into that role in my life and my community. And I think I also noticed at that point that I didn't feel like I had a lot of clarity on much. And I think that was a really good reflection for me, just the importance of knowing what you think about something, like how inherent that can be in being able to congruently speak to someone else. Um, and I've learned since then a lot more nuance of how you can also, explore topics. Like you don't have to believe something, to be able to speak on it, but you can use it as a form of questioning and stuff too. But there was just something about the calmness, the mental structure, the presence of the people that were comfortable in front of a crowd. It felt like
Yeah.
they were there. They were there with us, speaking to us, but not
Presence.
separate. They were present. And
Yeah.
I think that's a huge difference between how I felt when I was trying to speak publicly as a kid. I felt like every time I got more than 3 or 4 people, I would freak out. I would get really nervous. I would get sweaty. I would start talking a lot quicker. I'd start using words I don't typically use.
That's
Ones I didn't even necessarily know how to. It was like I was trying to, it's almost like this persona thing. But as that
huh,
was happening, I wasn't
huh,
present. I realized that in all that freaking out, I wasn't with those people that I'm trying to connect with. Like the only reason I feel like there's even a reason to share with a group is because you have some inherent connection or desire some connection with them, or there's some common goal that you want to share um, with them. And you can't do that if you're distant. You can't do that if I'm freaking off and in some small place in my head and just like throwing up this persona,
yeah.
um, this stage, this act. It's not that you can't communicate something, but you're not building relationship. You're not building a pathway. It's more of a play. It's more of an act. Like those things have their use, but that's not why I want to do it. I want to connect with people and I want to share. And so
Hmm.
for me, public speaking has been a really interesting, uncomfortable journey of introspection and learning about myself and relating to others. And it's probably more than any one singular activity pointed out to me more of my baggage,
Yeah.
where I have fears, where my weaknesses are, where
Yeah.
I'm scared.
Yeah.
Um, and I think like that's almost masochistically, like there's an aspect of that that keeps drawing me back to it as well. It's just like this is the most
Interesting.
consistently uncomfortable level to like opportunity to level up that I have. Like every time I do this, something comes up. Um and
Hmm.
and I think I've had an interesting relationship with it for a long time because for much of my life I didn't think I felt like I had anything to say. I didn't think like I had anything to share, and yet there was still this desire to get better at public speaking and interpersonal relationship. Like I see them, they both assist each other, like getting
Yeah.
really good at having
Yeah.
one-on-ones and genuinely caring and being present with another person. There's aspects of that are absolutely participatory and speaking from a stage, and vice versa. The more comfortable, clarity, grounded, present I
Yeah.
can get there, the more capable I'm doing that, with one person, with you right here, right now.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot of layered benefits from it. Um, and in our recent journey and activities through it, I think it's a really neat model and tool to work with people on, because it does bring up so much stuff, so many things that don't feel like they should be connected to public speaking. Like it touches every part of our lives when we get up on stage and start thinking
Yeah.
about that. And I think that is fascinating. Um, that there's this almost this unveiling that happens when we get on a stage, that there's
Yeah.
like, there's not a part of you that's not open to being reflected back. And that might be really uncomfortable. It often has for me. And yet it's been so rewarding every time I actually have stepped into that, because the things I've found out about myself, the things I've been able to sit with, not even always change. They're not always bad things. It's just like I was hiding it. I didn't know.
Or
I
you
was
weren't
scared
even
of it.
aware. Maybe you
Or I
weren't
didn't
hiding it,
even know it was there.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think there's
It's
a
like a
lot
big
of really
discovery
neat stuff
process.
in that. It
Yeah.
really is. And I think there's things about ourselves we'll never know um, until we put ourselves in the position to have to say something about it or comment about it. And it's like, we've talked about that a little bit, even with doing this podcast. There's been this,
Yeah.
obviously
Similar
more early
principle.
on, this interesting, weird energy that started having when we hit that record button. It's like, man,
Yeah.
I thought I was comfortable saying whatever shit I felt like I needed or wanted to say. I just like,
Yeah.
I can say whatever I want. And it's like, then you hit that record button. It's like, do I believe that? Do I actually think that? Do I would I ever want
Why
to
did
hear
I
that
just
said back
shrink?
to me? Did I, what am I gonna feel in a year
Yeah.
about what I said right now? And it's been this neat process, another neat layer of growing into that and being comfortable and owning who we are, even if it's not exactly who we desire to be.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and in a healthy person, I don't know that it ever is. Like, we desire to be who we are, yes, but there's always a desire to be leaning into something and growing and becoming as well. And
Mm.
so, like, uh, I don't know. I don't think there's anything I've chosen as an adult to do with more regularity that I like less, as far as just like a joy thing. It's just like, it gets me every time, at least for a little bit.
I think
Yeah.
that's beautiful, man. And I know you said that kind of masochistic remark, and I think maybe to the average person it might seem that way, but I think to those that have pushed themselves beyond who they used to be, comfort zones, whether it's a professional athletes or whoever, I think there's an interesting, my perspective is I'm like masochist, and I almost kind of like personally laugh in the face of that comment, because I think that's a requirement. And I think
Yeah.
that's part of what you do is
Yeah.
and so I'm sure you said that probably kind of humorously, whatever. I think it's worth, from my perspective,
Yeah. I
touching
appreciate
on
that.
that, because that's like, dude, no, that's what makes greats.
Mm-hmm.
That's discipline. There's a
Mm-hmm.
masochism to discipline. You could just,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's beautiful, because you're like, dude, this is brutal. And I don't really, it doesn't bring me joy, but it's like you see beyond the immediate satisfaction or discomfort.
Mm.
And that's a rarity. That's what makes the greats, the successful people, I think the influential people, they know
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, it's just inevitable. So
Mm-hmm.
cool, whatever. Let me endure that, because what's on the other side? Oh, shit. So I love that piece. And it sounds to me like, too, like what you said is, it's just, if I'm able to chunk up on that, if I heard you correctly, it has just been a massive, massive growth arena. Wildly uncomfortable,
Mm-hmm.
but you've reaped so much growth, awareness, self-awareness, introspection, opportunities. Like you said, like sometimes I can't even change it, but it's like, let me sit with that. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I know myself better.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a beautiful thing, man.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a really cool niche of the human experience
Mm-hmm.
is what we're talking about. And I think,
Mm-hmm.
it's that like, we've talked about that. I think another way of saying what we just said is the cave you fear to enter holds the jewels you seek. I think Bob Proctor used to say that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, this is it. A podcast, writing a book. And Brene Brown talks, it's like when we put ourselves out there, it is inevitably wildly vulnerable and scary.
Mm-hmm.
And the more we do that with a discipline, whether it's creating, putting a product out there, a book, public speaking, a podcast, whatever we do, starting a business is vulnerable, right? Creating, and I think that's the part of the entrepreneurial spirit
Mm-hmm.
is that is a part of the journey. If you value security and things, you're probably not going to do this stuff. If
Mm-hmm.
you haven't had a trauma or an accident or a disease or some horrible thing and then you rose to the occasion, probably don't like this stuff. And that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
We're wired, I think, differently, and we've been faced with some, pretty interesting cards at young ages. So it's like, there's something to this. Why don't I dive in?
Mm-hmm.
And I think what's cool is too what you say, like you're better off for it. You're more aware of who you are as a soul, as a human, your personality, your strengths, your weaknesses. And then what do we do with that?
Mm-hmm.
Right? I think it influences every part of life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just this really cool journey. And so does that did I hear you right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Right on. Um yeah, and I think there's just so much to explore here, man. Yeah, it's an interesting piece. Several things I came up when you were speaking is the I think you said something about like maybe it was a persona or something, and I know I've been faced with that in the podcast and coaching and doing that retreat we did is like who I thought I should be or who I thought I was or who I thought I wanted to be versus what who and what I really am.
Mm-hmm.
And that's terrifying because it's like the ego is all of a sudden you shine a light and the ego is kind of naked and it freaks out. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
but in doing that, I'm way more empowered because then I think if we have a growth mindset, the baggage that will inevitably arise, we are better equipped to do that and to seek out facing the work that needs to be done to grow from that. And if you don't have that approach, I think it's just terrifying. And so with that, it's cool. Every time, whether it's public speaking, creating something, putting something out in the world to be ridiculed or criticized or haters to come out of nowhere and just, whatever. And we have a growth mindset to work with, to feel, to see the baggage that arises. We're always going to be better for it in the long run. And I think that's really special, man. It's when I think about us and just pressing the record button on this podcast, I feel like 90 something percent of that for me at least is gone. Sometimes I still notice stuff. I was like, oh, like even last week, I'm like, oh, I'm a little bit different. Maybe what's going on here? And I think I still catch it to the best that I can.
Yeah.
And I think that's public speaking just takes to the nth degree. And it's like, I think coming back full circle to what you said about the greats or people that are just so comfortable. There's I think a charisma to that authenticity of I care about what I'm doing. I care about my message. I care about why I'm here. But I care very little as to what people think or what I should or shouldn't be while I'm doing it. And I think that becomes really cool. And that's what makes the greats is whether you're a little more hyper or whether you're more calm or whatever it is. Like if we face and embrace parts of us that are just us, we become, I think that's that calmness of, I kind of don't care what you think. My mind's not doing all those what ifs now. And that's like courage. There's so much going on there and it's liberating. And it's like, I think it's kind of a superpower in itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can keep going, but I think I'll stop there
I
for
hear
now.
that.
Yeah.
I don't think that's overstating it at all. I think it's absolutely a superpower. I think the ability to public speak is, but what's beneath it, I would say the major majority of the time behind a very good speaker is someone who has done a lot of internal work, most likely.
Yeah.
Who is really comfortable with himself, at least in the topic that they're speaking on, at least in the area that they're, because this is true of human life. Like we do categorize ourselves, like whether it's actually categorizations or compartments of our life, work, relationship, personal fitness, like they're not actually like separate parts of us, but so much of how our brain and emotions and mental connect, like we do kind of section off, and like, you know, one of us may be way more comfortable with our personal health and finance than we are with our you know I don't know, than we are with our job or our retirement plans or whatever it is with family. So there's like different sections that we can be more inherently congruent, more connected, that we have a clearer voice to speak from. And but I think there's this neat reality happening within public speaking that somebody has to take that journey of realizing that they are putting themselves out in front of other people. They are making themselves vulnerable. That
Yeah,
to do it effectively, they have to be authentic. You can do it well and not be, but you can get so much better. Anybody who is good not being authentic, like they will be exponentially better if they are actually authentic. Because I
I
think you
agree with
can
that.
have a skill or a craft at just saying things and not be connected. But when you are, the energy is just different and it can
Yeah,
change people. So
agreed, agreed.
there's the process of
Huh.
becoming connected with that and spending time in that energy, which so many of us don't do in our lives. Like, even if we know that part of ourselves, we rarely or consistently take time being with that portion of ourselves, um, and celebrating it and letting others see it. And then I think there's this other reality that's happening that is, it forces us to realize how much we give a fuck what other people think.
Oh shit, yeah.
And if there's any of that in you, which I don't know a human who doesn't at least have a little bit of that in you,
Yes,
it
yes,
will be exposed when you speak
yes.
publicly. And I
Mm.
think that's one of the maybe not so hidden, but incredible gems within public speaking is it shows you an attachment that your life would be better off with if you released. And every time you experience it and don't release that baggage of hanging on, that attachment of hanging on
Yes,
to what someone else thinks, you will fucking feel it. Your nerves will go
yes.
crazy. Your mouth will go dry. You'll lose your thoughts, lose the word, like whatever it is.
Yeah.
It reminds you
Mm.
powerfully that that attachment is still there. And I
Yes.
think that's why it's so uncomfortable for so many of us is one, we haven't necessarily realized that those are attachments to what other people think about us.
Mm-hmm.
Secondary to that, I think the major majority of us don't know that there's another way. Don't know
Mm.
that it's okay to have those attachments now because I can release them. There's something I can do about that. I can let that go. I can choose something else. So many of us, once we experience that, don't know there's another option, don't know that there's actually a way to be on that stage and be whole and be present and care about those people and not care what they think about me. Because there's a
Yeah.
big difference.
Yes.
There's a big
Yes.
difference.
It's well
And
said.
I also think
Huh.
the healthier you can get, and by healthy in this scenario, I mean the less attachment you can have to what other people think and their
Yeah.
reactions. I honestly think the more genuinely you can really care for them, the more
Yes.
genuinely you can actually
Yes.
give to them, because your fear or concern about how you look is absolutely blocking your clarity and vision of what's happening in their life. You're
And
still
serving them.
seeing you. You're
Yes.
still seeing you when you see them.
Yep. Yep.
Um, and until you
Mm.
learn to let go of that, like you're not going to
Mm.
have that clarity on them. And this is a journey in itself too. There are many steps along that way. Like I am infinitely better at being in front of a group, uh, 10, 20, 30, 100, 200 people than I was 2 years ago, 5 years ago. And there's so much room for me to get better and have even less attachment to what people think. So
Yeah.
like it's an ongoing journey, and we discover, you know, new things that we can release as we move forward.
Yeah.
But knowing that that can change, knowing that there are other options, and welcoming, even celebrating the fact that other things in our lives, public speaking in this, scenario, is pointing out stuff that we could work on, um, is really cool. I mean, I think that's, again, and I'm glad you went back to this about the joke about being a masochist. I think like that's the piece that's beautiful about the working out or the going back to things that teach us something. Like there is something that's uncomfortable about it, but I am so grateful for that discomfort because I'm able to take that discomfort, release it, work with it, sit with it, accept it, whatever that process is. And I
Yes.
am changed by
Yes.
it. And I come out a very
Yes.
different person on the other
Yes.
side of that. And I'm just like,
Yes.
that is cool. And I think that's why I'm really excited for anybody to step into public speaking because I think it's a very unique, almost like basic training or crash course on a way to level up your life. Like, I don't care what else is going on in your life. Like, getting up on
Yeah.
a stage will point out some stuff that you can work on. Like, it'll come
Yeah.
up.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and when we honor that in our lives, I think, we learn the pattern of dealing with those things and we can start to do that in other areas. Again, I think it's similar to the gym, like when we consistently show up for ourselves, doing the hard things,
Yes.
reflecting back to ourselves that we give a fuck, that I care about my body,
Yeah.
that I care enough to eat the right things, I care enough to move some weight around,
Mm-hmm.
I care enough to get outside and take a walk, take a run,
Mm-hmm.
like that shows the other parts of our lives that we care and that we're doing something about it. And we can start borrowing some of those techniques, some of those strategies from this area and using it in the rest. And so I don't know. I went on a kind of a diatribe there, but that's
That was
kind of
amazing.
how public
That's
speaking has showed up
fantastic.
in my life. Like it's been an
Yeah.
amazing anvil or crucible of which like an immense amount of my life outside of public speaking has changed because of it,
Yeah.
because of the light that's put on it.
Yeah.
And I'm really grateful.
Dude, that
Uh,
was that was amazing. There's so many gems there. Um,
and I still wouldn't
s-
consider, and I think this is important. I still wouldn't consider myself a good public speaker, and I think that's okay. Like I'm working toward it, but I still got the lessons. I still got the like.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
don't have to end up being Tony Robbins. You don't have to end up in front of a stage of
Yeah.
twenty
Being a
thousand
Martin Luther King or something.
to mean
Yeah.
that this was a successful venture or journey. Like
For
it's a
you.
participation with yourself
Yeah.
and with being present and vulnerable
Uh,
and connecting with others.
yeah.
And where that journey goes is where that journey goes. But I think it's a huge misstep to place like the outcome of who I become as a public speaker on the value of this process. Like it's the doing of it that is so useful.
Totally. Dude, there's so many gems there. uh God, that was good. You were like inspiring me. I was just like, yes, yes, come on, preach, brother, go. Like this is so. You said so many good things there. It's hard to even organize them in my mind right now. I wanted to add. Jordan Peterson talks about this. I don't even know which interview, but it was amazing.
Oh, I'd be curious.
Is so I've studied epigenetics like unofficially. Just I don't have like a degree or anything, but you know, a lot of people still don't know what epigenetics is, how it ties to public speaking and what we're talking about is really cool. When it comes to disease or just I'll simplify it with that. It's probably the easiest way to say it is we used to think and say that you're genetically predisposed. It's a gene thing, and what we know now is that most of that's bullshit. 99 point something percent is actually a gene issue that you just can't change when it comes to like, disease and health and chronic issues and all these things that people are trying to constantly figure out. But epigenetics is like there's a light switch. Yeah, you can't change the fact that you have a light switch. But what we do with our mind, with our energy, our bodies, our environment, what we think, how we feel, how we speak, all these things epigenetically dictate whether the switch is on or off. The switch is there, but is it on or off? And Jordan Peterson talks about when we do these things, when we face stressors and rise to the occasion, when we take on more responsibility, when we put ourselves in situations that are tough where we can grow, we literally, and Joe Dispenza has also proven this a lot in his retreats, this isn't some like woo-woo theory of like, or like masochistic, like, yeah, it's, no pain, no gain. Like, it's proven. Epigenetically, when we do something hard with the discipline and grow and face it, we literally create different proteins throughout our system. There is an epigenetic shift when we meditate, when we do breath work, when we do a cold plunge, when we work out, when we public speak. It isn't just some like woo-woo thing. It's scientifically proven. We literally are not the same body or being. We are making different proteins. We are literally not the same person by doing this. And that's pretty wild. Like, it's not just some reframe. Like, it's real. It's very real. And when you do it with consistent, you literally physically on a protein epigenetic, like DNA level, are not the same human. And that's very interesting to me.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to add that in. And I think too, probably have to wrap up somewhat soon, but to something you said that got me excited and just kind of bringing it back full circle was, I think, when we public speak, when we have this journey, when we face these things, to me, it's like, so far in my journey, I had on these masks and these personas and these hoodies and my little bubbles and all this baggage. And when you public speak, it shines a mega light on you. And then it's up to us what we're going to do with that. And when we allow the process to unfold with some grace, some curiosity, some courage, some humility, a very beautiful thing happens where whoever we thought we were and whoever we thought we are start to merge. And the more we embrace that, we become indestructible, we become stronger, we become more ourselves, more authentic. And it's like, I can't even quite say that the like climactic point I'm trying to make, I think it's hard to articulate, is it's so simple, but it forces us the opportunity to be more ourselves. That's liberating. That's freedom. It enhances every part of our life, and it's wildly uncomfortable because the ego has to die again and again and again in different ways. And I think, like, when I think of School of Greatness, what's that guy's name? Big podcast, School of Greatness.
I don't know. It's not clicking anything.
I know you know who he is. He does events now with David Goggins. He's at Joe Dispenza. He's at all kinds of people on his podcast. Mel Robbins. School of Greatness, anyway. That's his podcast. He was asking somebody about public speaking, and it might have been Tony Robbins or something. I don't know. But he said, because he does a lot of public speaking now, and he's like, for me, I used to get so nervous. I wouldn't sleep right for days prior. I mean, you look at this guy. He's tall. He's handsome. He's successful. He's well-spoken. He just seems cool as a cucumber. And he said, it took me, I don't know how many speeches he had to do, 10, 20, 30, 40 something. He's like, until I finally didn't have so many nerves. And it's like, even someone at that caliber, like, he had his journey. And I think it's like what pace we adjust and let that spotlight of vulnerability evolve us is up to each individual. But I think it's just so powerful. It separates all the bullshit. And it's like, here's your stuff. Here's who you are. Like, are you going to embrace it? Are you still trying to, like, pretend and some ego thing you think you should? It's like, let it fucking go. Like, and it's so liberating to be like, I'm okay with criticism. I'm more, the last year of my life, I've wildly enhanced in my comfort with that. And I think it's one and the same. And it's like, cool. Someone says I'm the stupidest, lamest, worst speaker in the world, or they are praising me and saying I'm the best person. If I can somehow bring those in the same arena, and it's, to me, I think I'll finish with this. It comes to, why am I doing this? Am I doing this for me because I want money or want to be seen as some authority figure? Like, I've already lost. Why am I doing this? And for me, like, as I'm preparing to get more into this, is I'm like, as long as I hold that, why am I doing this on a human level as if I was speaking to one person, and I'm real and I'm present and I'm tied to that? I think I'm way more equipped to let all this bullshit dribble away
Yeah.
and be authentic
Yeah.
and maintain the courage in like a calm-ish, hopefully, state.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's just so amazing.
Yeah, that's cool, man.
So amazing. What
Well,
other
thanks
thoughts do
for
you have?
no,
Anything
I
else?
think this is great.
Yeah.
I don't really have any thoughts in conclusion, partly
Okay.
because this is still there's so much that I'm still swirling around in my head around public speaking and this journey and stuff, and
Yeah.
I'm just excited for um I think those who are interested know it.
Mm.
And it was like, reflecting on a thing for me too. Like I would have said I wasn't interested for a long time, but something inside me just uh kept pulling me toward that. And for those who do, step into it, I think it's a really useful and neat training ground that is, as far as the speed with which it can happen, is unique. Um, like you can be in the fire real quick, internally, just really stepping into whatever drama is there, to deal with and to release and let go. And I'm excited for just continuing to see where that path leads, because we're on it. Uh, this is an exercise in speaking publicly, right now, and it's just it's been neat, man. So thanks for bringing this up. I think it was a really useful topic, and I'm really
Yeah.
curious to interact with listeners and stuff, and too, and just see, like,
See what people think. Yeah.
yeah, and just the varied ways that public speaking or being a leader really shows up uh in our lives, the opportunities there. So thanks again, man.
Thanks, brother. Catch you soon.
All right, till next time.